Swiss luxury group Richemont owns several of the world's leading jewellery, watches and writing instruments brands, including Cartier, Cleef Arpels, IWC, Panerai and Montblanc. It is controlled by the Rupert family and has a market cap of 362.5 billion rand, a price-to-earnings ratio of 18.5 and a dividend yield of 0.5%. And again, we're seeing the same price action on this share price graph. So all these consumer-related stocks doing incredibly well of late.
I'd say, well, that's due to two elements. One is that underlying operationally they are excellent companies, but also because they all represent a rand hedge element, which, like I said before, you want to have a certain amount of your portfolio in rand hedges currently, because you're not quite sure where the rand's going to go. You're not entirely sure if the trade deficit is going to improve or not. You see resource prices coming off, it concerns you. You definitely want that rand hedge element. So it's definitely that's played a part in the trajectory of these graphs. This not as strong as the last two. In the short to medium term, Richemont is very sensitive to news coming out of China, because for a lot of people that represents the growth story for them, not only in mainland China, but even more so in tourism, because a lot of their sales are actually made by tourists, Chinese tourists buying in the UK, etc. Now, recently the share price actually suffered a bit of a blip from the news of one or two cases of a new strain of Asian flu in China. Things like that would affect the price in the short term.
Which it has here.
If you're comfortable with the underlying growth story, then you can use those opportunities to load up. Of course, you've got to wonder whether structurally China, in terms of being such a strong consumer of these luxury items as they were before, if that's going to continue.
We hold it in the hot stocks portfolio?
Yes, and you know, personally and across our client base. So we've got tons and tons of these, and we've held them since the unbundling of the British America tobacco, you know, way back there in 2009. Largely on the basis that they fall into a category which we define as aspirational consumerism. So, you know, I might not be a big liker of a nice fancy watch, but in China, there's a you know, a culture of gifting. So let's say, for instance, you know, Daniel was getting married, and I wanted to give him something, or maybe his uncle would be a better example. He'd give him a lovely brand new watch and say, "There we go." You know.
You're a very generous man, considering you don't know Daniel's uncle.
Well, you know, maybe his uncle's very rich. I don't know. But there's this culture of gifting. So I think you know, and it's hard to understand. So literally 5 years ago, Chinese sales or Asia Pacific sales were 1/3 of what they were in Europe. Now they're equal. And as Daniel said, a lot of those sales from Europe are actually tour buses loaded up with 100 Chinese who all, you know, a queue outside a Cartier shop and buy lots of wonderful fancy things.
Daniel, hot or not on Richemont?
So I just comment on that. The comment about gifting is it's very true. It also relates a lot to the family dynamics there, because you have a situation of I think it's the one-child policy. So you can, and that's also a reason why things like BMW sales have been increasing there, because you can buy things for your child because you don't have massive families. You can buy things for your nephew because you've only got one. But there was an element of gifting that was going into the political circles, and the politicians have crunched down on that significantly. So that's caused a bit of concern.
So you think that could impact something like Richemont?
It would definitely impact them, definitely. So based on that, I'm a little bit concerned in the near term. I'd say I'm more hot on SAB and BTI in terms of the international consumer, so I would hold off on this for now at current levels.
Not hot.
Not hot.
I've got to pin you down to hot or not hot.
Not hot.
Hot.
Sasha.
Hot. Even though Xi Jinping has taken offense to the gifting culture, and even though it has had an impact, I think you've already seen it in the price to a large extent.
So hot. Clear hot.